And for 2 hours, I had no greater joy in my life than to drive my employees 2 blocks to our own hotel.
Welcome to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, the go-to podcast for high performers. I'm Andrew Moses, and each week I talk with Olympians, pro athletes, TV stars, Grammy winners, best-selling authors, CEOs, and other high performers to uncover their success secrets. Every conversation is jam-packed with inspiration and actionable ideas we all can apply to our own lives, personally and professionally. Get ready for a behind-the-scenes look at the techniques, processes, and mindsets powering the world's most successful people. Let's go.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Everybody Pulls the Tarp. As you can hear, I have been fighting through some laryngitis, but I can't wait to tell you about this week's guest, Amanda Joyner. Amanda has spent her career working for one of the world's most iconic brands, the Ritz-Carlton. For over a century, the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company has been revolutionizing the hospitality industry. And today, the Ritz-Carlton sets itself apart as a global leader in luxury and service-oriented hospitality in the world's most desirable destinations. The brand is part of Marriott International, and there are more than 100 Ritz-Carlton hotels and resorts today, with even more on the way. Amanda is the Global Vice President of the Ritz-Carlton Leadership Center, where she and her team help companies from all over the world, across many different industries, transform their culture, improve customer experiences, and enhance employee engagement. They do it by taking the leadership, employee culture, and customer service principles that make the Ritz-Carlton one of the world's most celebrated brands, and applying those same principles and frameworks in other industries. Amanda has amassed more than 30 years of hospitality experience since beginning her career with the Ritz-Carlton as a hotel housekeeping supervisor on the evening shift. Over the years, she worked her way up through the organization with hard work and tireless dedication. Prior to her current role at the Ritz-Carlton Leadership Center, she served as the general manager of the Ritz-Carlton St. Louis, where her hotel achieved unprecedented gains in customer experience rankings and massive increases in employee engagement. Amanda's efforts at the Ritz-Carlton St. Louis earned her the Global Ritz-Carlton General Manager of the Year award. In our conversation, Amanda shares a behind-the-scenes look at how the Ritz-Carlton delivers extraordinary experiences on a daily basis and exceeds even the highest of expectations. But this episode is about so much more than hotels and resorts. It's a powerful reminder that when we dedicate our lives to serving others and exceeding expectations, we truly have the power to change people's lives and create moments that get remembered forever. This episode is filled with so many powerful ideas we all can apply. And I hope you take away as much from this one as I have.
Oh, and one more thing. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional.
So, let's pull the tarp and get straight to Amanda Joyner.
You started with Ritz-Carlton as a housekeeping supervisor on the overnight shift. So paint that scene for me. Myself, and I'm sure many, many people listening spend a lot of time in hotels. Paint the scene. What is the Ritz-Carlton's housekeeping overnight supervisor doing? What does the job entail? What is going on hour by hour? Take me back to that moment of your career.
You are so fantastic. Yeah, it was my first job. And just for a crisp clarification, it was like the evening shift.
Okay.
So I definitely pulled overnight shifts many times, but really my primary focus, I was responsible for turn down. So turn down is that fantastic second service that we provide at our beautiful Ritz-Carlton hotels. So that really means that I ran the housekeeping experience for our guests at night. So we turned down beds, we freshened rooms, we put chocolates on pillows. And honestly, we were there to meet any needs that the guests had between, 5 o'clock until whenever they needed their service. So yeah, we did anything for them they absolutely needed. It was so much fun.
Now, it's fun. I would imagine in a job like that, you're getting a lot of requests, a lot of demands. You're seeing a lot of different things. You're seeing some people who are kind, some people who are not so kind. How do you balance and navigate, all that?
Interesting question. Well, first of all, I would be remiss to not say that working for the Ritz-Carlton has just given me all the tools and resources to be just honestly the leader that I am today. My life has changed as a human being, having worked for this beautiful brand, Ritz-Carlton. And so I knew on day one, and I worked for other brands before, and they're all fantastic. Really great. I came from another big hospitality company from housekeeping when I joined Ritz-Carlton, and I learned a lot from them. But what was really clear to me that was different is the very first 2 days of my employee experience, and frankly, any employee's experience, is spent learning the gold standards of the Ritz-Carlton. And the gold standards are really our mission, vision, values, tools of empowerment that we give to all of our ladies and gentlemen to empower them to know how to make a decision. So when I get asked questions like that, like, how did you balance it all? Maybe on my first 2 weeks in the job, I didn't have all the answers to all the questions that guests may need or want. But what I did absolutely with perfect clarity understand is that I was empowered to do whatever it took to take care of their needs. And it's not always a problem-solving circumstance. It really, the specialness of hospitality and why I love it and have been doing it for 30 years and now obviously provide consulting services against it, is because you get to make a difference in the life of a customer in a real emotional way where they'll tell their friends and family about it forever. And it could be the smallest, tiniest thing. So I can think of many times, we get a phone call and a woman would say, I need to speak to someone and I don't want to do it over the phone. And I would go to their doorstep and it would be, a traveler, a female traveler, and maybe she needed a personal woman's product of some sort. And, they're just this intimacy you get like to peek into people's lives, right? You're in their home away from home environment. It's a really sacred place. And when we do it correctly and we make them feel safe and secure, they begin to open up. And then they let us get to know them. And then we get to do really special things for them. So it's awesome. Not hard to balance.
You mentioned, there's so many things you mentioned there that I want to kind of
sorry.
pull on. But the first thing I want to touch on more is the empowerment. It sounds like you felt almost from day one that you were empowered to do whatever it takes to make the guests feel welcome, feel at home, feel like their needs are being met. How quickly did you feel that level of empowerment? And what is it about the experience and the way you're trained and developed at the Ritz-Carlton that made you feel like you had the empowerment? Because I think that's one of the biggest challenges today in customer experience is that you interact with people and you just feel like they're following some script and they're following some guidebook and they don't have the latitude to really address what's going on.
Yeah, you're so right. So there's so many things there. So first, this orientation experience is really immersive. And let's be honest, after 2 days working for any company, employees don't always believe what they're being told. So there is a journey that all employees, we call them ladies and gentlemen, they're the finest service professionals. There's a journey that employees go on, me included. I started in a leader role, so I probably understood more quickly, but I would say it takes our employees a solid year. But they go through phases where they learn the mission, vision, and values. They learn our highest priority. They learn that they are the brand themselves. If you take away the employees, the ladies and gentlemen, we're just beautiful boxes with nice beds to sleep in. That does not create loyalty. And honestly, it's so easily replicated. And when your competitor even renovates before you do, maybe they're even beating your product for a short period of time, right? So really, our product is our employees. They create the memories, right? Because when our guests check out, they don't take anything with them. There's like our stuff doesn't go with them, right? Anyway, so there's a journey that an employee goes on. They go through sort of, they hear it, and then they try it on by observing their colleagues around them using their empowerment. And then they actually start to test it and to see if really, at my other job, they said you can take care of the guest, but then I got pulled into my boss's office and then they asked me questions and I was nervous and scared, right? So that they observe it, they start to believe it, then they test it. And by the time they're probably 9 months into the job, they really start to become that advocate and they become the embodiment, the ambassador for what that is. And it's an ongoing effort. I have been talking about some of the same principles of emotional connections that I did when I was a housekeeping manager, that I did 26 years later as a general manager, which I did for 7 years. And now even today, when I provide consulting services to Fortune 500 companies, it's like repetition. But they have to see it, honestly. But you can't just tell them. They have to see it to believe it. And then, I'll tell you a little funny story. There's a colleague of mine. We always tell the story. She started in food and beverage, was in room service, and she had an opportunity with the guests, right? We delivered the food and it was cold or it wasn't cooked to their liking. Not acceptable, certainly. So this new employee, this new room service employee said, well, I was told I can use my tools of empowerment. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to look at the wine menu and I'm going to pick the most expensive bottle of champagne. Like it was like $800 or something. And this happened actually at the Ritz-Carlton Grand Cayman, by the way. And so she sent up this beautiful bottle of champagne, my sincere apologies. And she's like, okay, great, guests for life. So the next day, her leader came in and was like, my goodness, Neha, tell me what happened. And, whenever we have defects in Ritz-Carlton, we embrace them, right? It's not like who screwed up or who was bad. Something happened. So with full like transparency and like emotional, like seek to understand. So anyway, so Neha described, oh my goodness, the food was cold. And the leader said, so tell me what you did. And she said, oh, I picked this beautiful bottle of, I don't know, Cristal or something. And I sent the champagne out to the guests. And the leader said to her, so tell me, was the guest blown away? And there's sort of like a pause, quiet. And she said, well, I think so. And the leader said, oh, okay, well, how do you know the guest was impressed? And she said, well, gosh, wouldn't anyone be impressed by this champagne? And the leader said, well, actually, did you by chance look at their preferences? They don't drink.
They don't drink.
And it was this moment where this leader who now works for me paused and realized that it was a teaching moment. It was not about the $850. It was about really understanding what is the actual thing that would delight the guest. And it wasn't about the money. It was probably about cooking the food properly and genuinely apologizing and following up. But it's just such a great story. But that employee forever learned that I really am empowered, but I got to learn that like how to really customize it to create a guest for life. But I did it by actually being allowed to sort of make that mistake and learn through it. And she's with us, 19 years later, and she's a facilitator for us. But I just think it's a beautiful example. The leader pulled her in to see if the guest was satisfied and loyal. No other reason, to learn what the real preference was. So I just love that story because I think it's fascinating. We get asked all the time, like, do you really trust them? And we're like, yeah, we really do. And sometimes they get it wrong, and that's okay. But they'll be employees for life if we teach them,
100%. And it's also just a powerful reminder about the importance of not having a one-size-fits-all approach. It's just another great example why if you have this chart and it says, if this is the problem, this is the solution that you provide, this is how you address the issue with the guest, it doesn't work. Because if in that instance it had been, if this happens, bring a nice bottle of wine or bring a nice bottle of champagne, and you have a guest that's preferences to not drink, it doesn't resonate, it doesn't land. It's interesting on your point of figuring out what is going to matter most to the guest. We recently had the opportunity to visit the JW Marriott in Marco Island. And we were with our young children and another family, and we had a wonderful experience. I've heard wonderful things about this property, and it lived up to all the hype. And on the last night, however, we had a little bit of an issue. The air conditioner in our room broke. The room was getting very hot. It was getting late. We were packing up to leave for the airport early the next morning. Our young girls were trying to get some sleep. We had two absolutely wonderful maintenance workers who came to the room. They were, just picture this. My wife and I are trying to pack up. Our kids are trying to get some sleep. And you got two guys basically climbing through the ceiling, desperately trying to get this air conditioner work in this hot room in Florida. And after about an hour, one of the gentlemen comes to us. He says, I can't fix it. I can't fix it. He says, but I'm going to go down to the lobby and I'm going to find out if we have a open room right now on your floor or maybe the floor below. So you can go to that room and sleep. We'll leave your luggage here and you can come back in the morning and head to the airport. And I was just blown away because, again, like that's an example of like, my mind wasn't thinking about like, I need a refund. I need this. I need that. I really just need a place that's comfortable to sleep so I can get to bed and get this room packed so that we can get the family on the airplane the next day. I made the decision to go down to the lobby and thank the front desk. I wanted to make sure that the two gentlemen working in the maintenance department got kudos, not because they fixed the issue, but because they had figured out a way to solve like the broader problem. And moments later, the woman working the front desk, she came back. She said, we've refunded you the entire evening. And then I woke up the next morning to a whole boatload of Bonvoy points in my Marriott Bonvoy account. Amanda, I have told this story, to your point, it has to be at least 50 times in the last few weeks because I was so amazed at how the gentleman reacted to the situation. He couldn't even solve the problem, but in a way he still did.
100%.
And that was so cool to me. And he didn't just kind of say, call the desk, see what they can do for you. He's like, I'm going to go down to the front desk. I'm going to figure out where there's available clean rooms and I'm going to solve this problem for you, which is getting you guys a place to sleep tonight. And
that's right.
I was just blown away. You mentioned earlier, and this all relates, you mentioned earlier this idea of embracing defects, embracing challenges, things, and not looking to pass blame, but embracing it. So in practice, what does that look like behind the scenes to make sure that you have, ladies and gentlemen, on the Ritz-Carlton properties and across the family of Marriott brands that embrace this idea of taking challenges and turning them into opportunities where you can solve the real problem?
Yeah, I love that question. I really do think that's a huge differentiation is really we celebrate and people kind of cringe. I talk to so many like CEOs, directors of quality, or customer experience experts at companies. And it really is first about actually realizing it's a defect, right? And then recording it, right? We have a whole proprietary technology platform that we utilize to capture our guest preferences, what we've learned about them, rare and special. And then also that same platform we utilize to capture what we call defects. And we have this little acronym in Ritz-Carlton called Mr. Biv. And Mr. Biv is this little guy who just peeks in and everywhere that we live and work that is identified by mistakes, rework, inefficiencies, variations, right? All of these things that happen in our lives are all what we call defects, Mr. Bivs. And so we encourage, we reward, we recognize employees who record bivs, as we call them. And as a leader in the organization, when a defect happens, you are also encouraging that, like, oh my goodness. For example, the HVAC went out in 1207 at the Marco Island JW. Did we put it in the system? Once we understand that happened, why did it break down? Like asking 5 whys, which we learned through the Malcolm Baldrige quality application process, which obviously Ritz-Carlton is a 2-time winner, which is really special. No other hospitality organization. But the 5 why methodology is, well, why did the HVAC not work, right? Was the maintenance and upkeep happening? Was there a water line break? Whatever. I'm not a maintenance person, but like we go all the way down to get
what 5 times in order to get to the true root of the issue.
To the root cause. That's exactly right. But my point, I guess, in your bigger question is we celebrate that defects happen because it's not an employee's fault, right? Even if, let's pretend for a moment, an employee's not warm and engaging at check-in, and a leader observes that and they pull the employee aside. And the first thing they do is say, are you okay? Is everything all right? What's going on? I just observed you in the moment and you seemed a bit distracted. You weren't your lovely, warm self. How can I assist you? We don't say, do you realize you didn't check in that guest with a warm and sincere greeting? We're all humans. And I will tell you, just having that kind of compassion is the difference maker, but it's also accountability. We must address that the employee didn't have a warm and sincere greeting, but we first just ask ourselves why that happened. And lo and behold, that leader could unpack that there's something really serious going on that they're dealing with maybe in the system. So the point here is we embrace defects. We celebrate when employees bring them to our attention. We ask the 5 whys to drill down to solve them. And we record them so that we can see if there's any trends that are happening. It's important. It's a difference maker.
It is such a difference maker. And I just keep coming back to this idea of pride and empowerment and the way that people on all the Marriott properties that I've encountered just take such great pride in their work. I'll give you another example. I just thought of this now as we were talking, but again, there was another example on this experience that we had at the JW recently. So one of my daughters bought a shirt in the gift shop and we were carrying it in the bag and we went to one of the ice cream shops or places that you get dessert in the evening. And she put it on the floor. We get up to the room and we realize that we don't have the bag. So the restaurant is closed. I run down there. It's closed. There's no bag. There's no shirt. The restaurant's closed. There's nobody to talk to. I go back to the front. This is the front desk again. My friends, they must have gotten to know me there at this point. I said, my daughter left this shirt on the floor outside at this restaurant. It was an outdoor little restaurant. She said, well, come back in the morning and maybe somebody has found it. She's like, I bet you somebody will have found it. And in our close out of the evening, we'll have figured it out. So I'm like, oh, okay, maybe. And she says, and there is a lost and found system here. And I'm assuming I'm going to come down in the morning. There's going to be this ugly cardboard box that I'm going to be sifting through smelly sandals and suntan lotion and old shirts. Amanda, she hands me in the morning my daughter's shirt in a bag with barcodes on it, detailed instructions about where it was found, the time it was found, who found it. I mean, you thought this was a shirt that we bought in a gift shop. You would have thought that this was a kidney that was being transplanted and moved across the country from the donor to the recipient. The attention to detail that they put into something that in my mind was important to my daughter, and I didn't want to lose the money from this t-shirt that we had bought, but was seemingly something that in your eyes, in the team's eyes at this hotel would have been so small and insignificant. The attention to detail that they put in was just staggering.
Well, you've really hit on, I think, a thing that so many companies are trying to figure out in this day and age, right? Which is, how do I differentiate myself? And the brands or organizations that really understand that they provide not just a functional benefit, but an emotional benefit, get it right. And brands that don't focus on fulfilling that emotional benefit are missing out to their competitors who are working on that strategy. So kind of said differently, if people are just meeting expectations, which is hard sometimes, by the way, I want to be
It's
clear.
hard to just meet expectations. No question.
There's no doubt. There's a high bar. People check into a Ritz-Carlton. Do you think they have a high expectation? Absolutely. If there is something that is not surgically clean in their room, the opportunity is even that much greater because their expectation is so high.
All right, everyone. We'll get back to the conversation momentarily. But first, I want to tell you about my free weekly email newsletter, Tarp Pullers. Each week, I share an uplifting and inspirational tarp pulling story that is sure to brighten your day. And I also highlight some of the most powerful ideas I've learned on my journey talking to 200 and counting of the world's top performers. The newsletter is short, concise, and a reader recently told me this. She said it makes her day every time it hits her inbox. Go to everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter to sign up today.
But the important point here, and we talk to so many organizations about that, is really understanding the emotional benefit is what's going to set you apart. So it is the little details, 100%. I mean, I could tell you 1,000 stories about just a human gesture, cost nothing. People are all fixated on how much should I empower my employees? How much money do I give them? What's the chart that says it's my approval? And they are missing the point. The point is listen to the needs of your customer, fulfill something that's unexpressed, and you will have them for life. And in Ritz-Carlton, if we do it right, that means that they maybe want to buy a residence with us, or they travel on one of our new beautiful yachts and they've never taken a cruise before, right? Something like that. And then those CEOs, I will never forget this. We have a customer, which we don't really talk about our customers because sometimes they're their secret sauce. But we had a customer who was a CEO and was on the Ritz-Carlton yacht, right? And he was thinking about doing some culture transformation work. And he's on one of the ships, and he says to the bartender on the yacht, "So tell me, is it true? Do you have your Credo card on you?" And the bartender on the yacht was like, "Absolutely, sir. In fact, I started at the Ritz-Carlton Boston." And he pulls out his Credo card, and the CEO was completely blown away. They had a good kindred spirit. And when he reached out to us to work on a culture transformation project for them to really kind of transform the healthcare space in an organization in Florida, he told that story. And he said, "I've always wanted to kind of create a legacy for this organization when I leave. And I had always respected the methodologies of Ritz-Carlton. And in that moment, I realized the proof was in the pudding. So kind of our fate was in that bartender's hand. And so you have to trust your employees. That's what we just keep going back to that, right?
Yeah.
You have to trust your employees. And sometimes they're going to make a mistake, and that's okay. And when you teach them, they're going to, 30 years later be general managers or provide consulting services to change the lives of individuals, for customers in all sectors, right? It's just really cool. Couldn't be more.
It is something that I as you said, I mean, it seems at times like a lost art today, right? It's hard enough.
Yeah.
People have a difficult enough time meeting expectations, exceeding expectations, and going above and beyond, pulling the tarp, as I say every single week when we talk about here on this podcast, living the everybody pulls the tarp mindset. It's truly hard to do and requires intention and attention to detail. So this whole idea of everybody pulls the tarp that I talk about every single week, for me, goes back more than 20 years ago to an internship I had working in minor league baseball. And many listeners have heard this story before, but the quick version is I show up on the first day. I've got nice clothes on. I'm expecting to be working in this front office internship, learning the business of sports. And quickly, the team's general manager and president says, "All of you new interns need to bring a pair of old clothes and keep here at the ballpark so you can help the grounds crew pull the tarp on and off the field when it rains." And I'm really puzzled. And I'm thinking, isn't this what a grounds crew is for? And he explains that minor league teams and big league teams have the same field, the same dirt size, the same lines, the same grass generally. But the major league clubs have much bigger budgets and a lot more people to do the job. So it might, on a big league, it might take 30 people to get a tarp on and off the field, but we only had 5 or 6 groundskeepers on the minor league team. So we're all going to pitch in. We're all going to pull the tarp. And that's where this idea, this everybody pulls the tarp mindset was first instilled in my mind. And it's something that I've championed for many, many years since. But I did way more than pull the tarp that summer, Amanda. I dressed as the mascot. I inflated the moon bounces. I sold merchandise in the stands. One night, the fireworks, because of wind, the fireworks drifted into center field and we had a game the next day. I picked up the fireworks debris. I did anything that was asked of me. But another thing that was really instilled in us in the early days of that internship and that experience was the attention to detail and going above and beyond. And for us, attention to detail looked like everybody carry a small pocket notebook and a pen in your pocket at all times. And if you see something around the ballpark that doesn't look right, a toilet that's overflowing, a concession stand that doesn't have popcorn, write it down, capture it, make sure you communicate it to somebody. That was very, very cool to me because it really said, hey, everybody's eyes and everybody's perspectives matter here. It's not just about what department you work in or what function you have. The other thing was constantly look for a way to clean up any disappointment or exceed expectations. An example being at a minor league ballpark, kids come with their gloves and they want to catch foul balls. And there's always, you see it on TV or social media, there's that scrum where maybe, unfortunately, like an adult takes the foul ball from a kid, or 2 or 3 kids go and one gets it and 2 are disappointed. And they told us, they said, you know what? There's a stash of previously game used balls available near the locker room. Go down there when you have a moment and bring the kid that didn't get the ball a foul ball. It's a foul ball from a different day. It's not from that moment, but it's close. And I just thought that those little details, those little moments where we challenged ourselves to exceed expectations were really, really neat. But I think the biggest thing for me with this everybody pulls the tarp idea is that nobody's above or beneath anything. Somebody who's the team's general manager or the CFO would be out there shoulder to shoulder pulling the tarp with the grounds crew. If the mascot was out, somebody stepped up and dressed up as the mascot. My understanding is that at the Ritz-Carlton, you have an equivalent of pulling the tarp. I think you all call it modeling lateral service. Am I capturing that?
I love it. Yeah, lateral.
Is that generally, what is modeling lateral service?
Yeah, I love it. Lateral service just really means whenever we need to take care of the needs of a guest, if you can't do it yourself, like any colleague will jump in and support and assist you. Meaning the priority of taking care of the guest is number one. So if you're checking in a guest and you can't escort them over to the restaurant and help them get seated, you could lean through lateral service on a colleague to help you do that. So lateral service is alive and well at Ritz-Carltons all around the world. And certainly in leadership roles, we all do wonderful things like help with plate up in the kitchen for 1,000 people, or I can't tell you how many back ballrooms I vacuumed, like during a big tight turn. But I think sort of the bigger point of pull the tarp when I read your story and have heard you kind of unpack that for me now is, first of all, you had a great leader in this minor league baseball organization that really crystallized for everyone how they impacted the mission of the organization. It was crystal clear that they wanted to differentiate themselves. And I think about so many times where we were in what I would call a pinch situation at my former hotel in St. Louis, where I was the general manager of for nearly 8 years. And the only way I felt like I could continue to inspire and ask even more on the highest bar possible is if I was in the trenches with my ladies and gentlemen. I remember like washing dishes for 12 hours because I had a steward like in my suit, that I went and put a t-shirt on. And although maybe someone would say, wow, that's kind of admirable, that's pretty cool. At the end of the day, the work needed to get done. So yes, I wanted to inspire my employees, but the physical work had to get done. And the true thing is, organizations that really get it right understand that it's an uncompromising commitment to your mission. That's it. It's uncompromising. No matter what needs to be done, you can't just say, oh, you know what? Today, I don't feel like it. You know what? Today, I'm just like, I had a bad day. So I'll just tell you a little fun story because I think stories make the point, right? We had a customer that gave us business in our hotel in January in St. Louis. It's snowing, it's cold. It's not a big demand period for us. Huge customer. They bought out our hotel. And guess what happened? Snowstorm came. So we have a sold out hotel. So we went into like, how are we going to take care of these customers for 3 days? So we bought like 100 rooms at a hotel next door to us. And we had kind of a skeleton crew. We hunkered down. We paid for all the employees to sleep there, right? And the first morning, I did it every morning, but the first morning I took my husband's Jeep, 4-wheel Jeep. And at like 5 o'clock in the morning, I like pulled up into this hotel, like up into the porte-cochere and said, all right, ladies and gentlemen, it was 2 blocks away. And they literally like, Miss Joyner. And I said, what? You're not going to walk in the snow? And for 2 hours, I had no greater joy in my life than to drive my employees 2 blocks to our own hotel I got them all over there. We went in rounds like for 2 hours and then went into work. We worked all day, right? And it was the greatest joy of my life. And it was because I love what I do. I understand the mission, right? It's not because someone told me to do it. It's because I love the mission. We're here to take care of our guests. And when the employees know that, like you knew it, you knew you had to write down. Do you know how many employees may walk by a toilet and it's broken and they go, oh, someone else will fix it? No. It's not someone else's job. It's our job collectively. So I love that your podcast is based upon like pulling the tarp because people ask so often, like, how do you do it? I'm like, you don't compromise. If it is your mission, then it is your mission and you do everything in your power. And sometimes it's not perfect, but you lead by example. You have servant leadership in your step and you do whatever it takes to take care of the needs of your employees, your internal customers, or you're paying external customers, no matter what, always, every time.
You do whatever it takes, uncompromising focus on the mission. It is no wonder that, Amanda, when you were general manager of the Ritz-Carlton St. Louis, you achieved unprecedented 20-point gains in customer experience rankings and dramatic employee engagement increases. I bring data to verify. And you did earn Global Ritz-Carlton General Manager of the Year award. It is no surprise. It is no surprise what I hear. And that's probably just one example of so many moments where you made the decision to maintain that uncompromising commitment to the mission. So I am curious, when you think back like on your career, do you miss the days of being in the nitty gritty, like on property? Like, it's nice that you've got this big executive role in corporate, but tell me about that a little bit, because it's got to be a little bit of a about you. You just look like somebody who loves being in the trenches.
Yeah, I love it. So because we're on a podcast, people can't see my face, but like I have pink cheeks and I've got a huge smile on my face. So yeah, there's no doubt I love serving the guests. It's in my blood. And as a general manager, serving the guests really means serving the employees. It does, without question. But I have the coolest job and I am the envy of so many, because this opportunity is to provide Fortune 500 companies a behind the curtain access to the methods and mystique of the gold standards of Ritz-Carlton. And so we certainly don't take our Credo card and say, here, take our Credo card and you adopt one. But we get to, and I get the privilege to do it as well, really unpack what it means. And I said my life has been changed working for this company.
You did. You did say that.
It is absolutely true, because now I get to talk to really smart people who are industry leaders in sectors I'm not an expert in, but we have the same common strategy, which is they want to make a difference. And so like, yeah, that's my customer now, right? It's a totally different thing. So yes, I also get to travel a good bit and I get to be on property with ladies and gentlemen. And I do nothing more than love to spend time with them and praise them. I think that's the other thing that if I were listening to this podcast, and I were like, gosh, what do great leaders do? Reward the behavior you want, be real crystal clear. Besides emulating the behavior you want, make sure you're rewarding it. And when you define exactly what you want, not ambiguous, exactly what you want, and you reward it, you will get more of it. And it's important. Like recognizing your employees for the behavior that you want will get you just more of that behavior. And it perpetuates. People just can't stop fulfilling your mission because you're telling them, that's what I want. I'm so proud of you. Like you are embodying the company,
I think that idea applies not just professionally for Fortune 500 companies and hospitality brands, but it applies in every aspect of our life. I think even, as parents, for example, parents are, anybody in the community, anybody who interacts with different people, every action you take is something that you're sending a signal to someone that like, this is either the way you should behave or the way you shouldn't behave. Right. And I think that's very important. And going back to my example at that JW Marriott property, I mean, again, what I wanted my kids to see was not me agitated and yelling at these two kind gentlemen who were trying to fix this HVAC. I wanted them to see that I respected and appreciated the way they were going about their work. And I just think about the signal that we send to all of those around us, even in our personal lives, when we act not in accordance with the everybody pulls the tarp principles and not in accordance with the credo of the Ritz-Carlton way. I am curious, as we get ready to wrap up our conversation, Amanda, in what ways has the hospitality industry, or just let's call it customer experience in general, how has it changed the most over your more than 3 decades in this profession?
Oh, goodness. How is customer? I think the impact of technology, I would be remiss if I didn't say that technology has impacted customer service, because the expectation, like faster, better, right? Like immediacy. And I think there's a bit of confusion about personalization through technology, and then just asking you like 10 questions and then saying, I know you as a person. So I would pause on that. When I first started, like internet was sort of first coming out. So I'm a bit embarrassed to admit that. So
it's okay.
It's certainly speed of service has been impacted, but what has not been lost, which I have been so inspired by for 30 plus years, is listening to the needs of your customer and acting on those needs, right? And delivering the unexpected will never be solved through technology. And the stories and what I would call irrational loyalty, where guests will go out of their way to stay with you no matter what, comes when they feel seen, valued, and heard. And the good news is enhanced technology allows maybe things that aren't as fun for guests to choose a faster check-in process, right? Use a mobile key. And if that works for that customer, we want to provide it. But what I think is special is we don't prescribe sort of one way of doing things. We let technology be available to them if that's what they value, need, and want. And then we enable that personalization, high touch to happen when it's right for the customer. So yeah, I think that'd probably be the biggest thing over the 30 years that I've seen.
Well, Amanda, I have learned so much from you in our conversation here that frankly is going to forever change the way I look at hospitality. And I will never experience a stay at any hotel property the same way again. I have shared with my listeners and audience for a long time this idea that I think you can tell 99% of what you need to know about a person's character from 3 tests. One is, do they clean up after themselves at the Starbucks condiment counter? 2, if they are physically able, do they put their shopping cart back where it's supposed to go when they're done with it? And the 3rd is, watch how they treat service workers. That's going to tell you a lot about a person's character. And I guess if there's one thing I would say to kind of tie up our conversation here is just encourage all of us, when we're interacting with someone at a hotel or at a restaurant and things aren't going right, let's take a step back and give them the space to try and recover and try and embrace that defect as you described earlier and come up with a solution and assume positive intent. And I think the world will be a better place if more people operated that way. I am so grateful for this conversation, Amanda. There is no question in my mind. You are a tarp puller. All the ladies and gentlemen at the Ritz-Carlton properties and across the Marriott family are pulling that tarp, living the everybody pulls the tarp mindset. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me this week.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Instagram at AndrewMoses123 and sign up for my email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Until next time, keep pulling the tarp.